Okay, let's go.
Так, дорогі глядачі, дорогі підписники, друзі, нові глядачі, як завжди, на нашому каналі неординарні, цікаві, прогресивні люди. Так склалася доля, що сьогодні моїм співбесідником буде про людину, він про своє життя, про свою життєдіяльність розкаже трошки більше, але друг мого дитинства. Тарас, радий тебе бачити в форматі вже тепер співбесідника. Тарас має цікавий досвід життєвий. Тарас громадянин Сполучених Штатів Америки. І Канади. Але він не українського походження, він українець. Тарас народився в Україні. Тарас, може меншу, але велику частину життя провів в нашому місті Львові. Тому історія про Україну для нього, як людина, яка провела більше свого життя за океаном, не тільки відома з діаспорних чи оповідей бабусів, дідусів, він, власне, таке унікальне поєднання тих сучасних прогресивних українців, які будують історію України в світі, знаючи особливості нашої незалежності, наших реалій і, власне, сучасного викликів світу. Тому ми поговоримо з Тарасом про дуже актуальну проблему. Проблему сьогоднішнього дня, коли мільйони фахових українців, українок, студентів, дітей, на жаль, змушені емігрувати. Що буде після нашої перемоги, нам тяжко говорити, нам тяжко думати, тяжко уявляти. Але якраз Тарас – це прекрасний приклад, який з нами поділиться своїм успіхом як за кордоном, і як він далі цей успіх на даному періоді життя вирішив втілювати на нашій вже ненці в Україні, присутні тут, будучи присутнім, працюючи, власне, тут, в різних її куточках і містах. Сьогодні зробимо трошки ноу-хау. Ми будемо сподіватися, що наш канал буде розширюватися. Багато буде в нас підписників, надіємось, з кордону. То ми дозволимо собі провести наше інтерв'ю на англійській мові. Для того, щоб наші нові дописувачі могли також зрозуміти контент і мету наших зустрічей. So Taras, it's a big pleasure. I will mention once more that it's very unusual that you can meet as the interviewers, but also the people who shared maybe the most beautiful part of our life, of our childhood, growing up, getting the experience. You established yourself abroad. You had very successful gains in your business, in your activity. And our society, especially Ukrainian society, face today a huge challenge and I think a problem. As Henrik Sienkiewicz once wrote, "Quo vadis, where do you go? Where do you approach?" And you, as the person who established yourself in the both parts of our even planet, not only continent, can you give some advices, some I would say emphasizes some goals for talented Ukrainians who are much more disappointed and they frankly they lose the faith in the future of our country. So please perk them up. Give some professional, also life skills.
I'm sorry to disappoint you. I don't give advice.
No matter.
I have thoughts, but no advice.
That's the case. Your thoughts, your minds, your point of view. So your broadcast is wider than the single Ukrainians. So what is your practical ideas? What are the practical, I would say, life directions that you see and the most important you believe in the future of Ukrainians, not only Ukraine, because the Ukrainians is the main commonwealth of this state.
So there are two English sayings that I think are relevant right now. I think one is Churchill, keep calm and carry on, or maybe that's just British.
Yes.
And the other is never let a good crisis go to waste. So right now we live in extraordinary times where we never thought we would be at war, and yet we're alive, we're talking, and civilization is still here,
Yes.
and a lot of people are dying, and we thank them for their service.
That's a really pity. Unfortunately, that's we regret, but
we have to look at the situation now as where do we go from here?
yes,
We
from
have
our
what we have.
standpoint, yes.
How do we? What's the next step? So, and again, the second thing that I said was never let a good crisis go to waste. So, for example, we always had this unclear direction in Ukraine of whether we're going to go to Russia or
to Europe,
or to Europe or somewhere in
Well,
between.
like Van Damme split. Yes, our president
Yeah.
before you
Yeah.
get the example that he's like Jean-Claude Van Damme on the split. So
Yeah.
we have some mental split.
And
probably.
thanks to this crisis, we know pretty clearly where we're not going
Which
to go.
direction? Not on the direction of the Russian ship. Yes.
Yeah. So
Russians go to the
So I don't know if we would have ever made this decision without
with their mails. Yes.
without Russian stupidity.
Stupid.
That's one thing. The other thing is war is always really good after it's over. So every single big technical innovation came out during war. Every single big economic jump it has its origins in war. So U.S. Became a superpower after World War One.
Started to become a superpower.
And it became the only dominant superpower after World War II. Now, I don't expect Ukraine to become a superpower,
But in Eastern Europe, probably yes.
but given its size, it's gonna, hit way above its weight for the coming future. So both in terms of manufacturing, both in terms of societal stability, alignment, all that sort of stuff. So, for example, U.S. is right now falling apart because they haven't had a good war, so there's a lot of political conflict. When there's no common enemy, like they used to have the Soviet Union.
So biennial ideas, yes, but like biennial points of view, yes, in the U.S. policy, yes.
But there's just a lot of polarity in society. When you don't have a clear problem, you make up problems.
Yes, exactly. This is
and then in Ukraine, we have a very clear problem. So we don't make up as many problems.
As we see, we have a sweeping problem. Yes, we don't disperse in our.
It's a universal problem. It's the fight between good and evil, and it's really hard to find some sort of maybe Russians are okay kind of point of view because they're clearly fuckers.
This, I would say, it's a historical surgery. Yes, we finally cut any rudiments, any binding points with this Russian, so-called Russian world, yes, and this is such a, I would say, political or psychological regaining, yes, of the consciousness.
Yeah. Well, there's two things. So there is, I think Ukraine has always had a bit of a. So one of the greatest things about U.S. is when you live in U.S. you do not care about other countries. You literally you don't blame Canada except as a joke for something. You don't blame anybody else for your problems.
But now U.S. blame the China. Yes, this is the main.
No. China is just like we need to have an enemy.
Yes,
we
it's
need
not.
to have
I wouldn't
an
say
enemy.
the enemy. I would like opposer. Yes, when you.
Exactly.
You need to be in this constant. Constant feeling of the rivalry, yes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, yes. That's when the main empires always collapse when they have the appropriate.
Well, let's put it this way: who does U.S. blame for the rise of China? It blames itself. Kissinger, Nixon, all those people. You don't blame Mao for the rise of China. You don't blame Stalin. You don't blame anybody except yourself.
Yes. But let's a little bit move to more practical parts of our conversation. Can you share very briefly, yes, about your, as I mentioned before, your professional interpreter growth starting from US? Just can you compare your first feelings, yes, not when you as a kid arrived, a teenager arrived to Canada or to US, but when you started to work on your own, yes, and comparing your feeling now, being present in Ukraine. Actually, you also feel some challenges, yes, because you work, you feel you experience the environmental atmosphere, yes, and just share a bit of your
I'm
experience.
still not following the question.
Okay, so when you what were your emotional I would say status? How did you feel when you started your professional career in Canada and US, and how do you feel while working from Ukraine? Yes.
I mean, I feel like there's no connection between
There's
the
no
two.
connection.
It's just I have a career, and whether I do it in Ukraine or US, it's
So it can give the glimmer of hope, yes, for the especially for the young Ukrainians, that it's quite complicated, but it's realistic. That it's quite realistic to.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of difference between US. Like, if for somebody else, like not me, there's a lot of difference. So for me, I started in US. In the US, if you work hard, you can get to the top of whatever field you want to be in.
Can you correct me? Did you start your career from the Silicon Valley? Yes.
No.
You didn't work there.
My career started in Canada when I did a website for my church there.
Wow.
So when I moved at the age of 12, by 13 or 14, I had a contract, a little like informal contract with the church to make a website for them.
What sort of church? Was Ukrainian church?
Yeah, it was like in 1997.
Wow. You met many Ukrainians, yes.
It was
were your first clients?
Center Ivano-Franka в Vancouver, something like that. I forget the actual name.
Yes, and what were your
So then I had a couple more jobs. So I was in high school then, or like I don't even know if that's high school. But basically I was in grade 8, grade 9 doing part-time, just like no real jobs. And then after grade 10 I got my first sort of summer full-time job. I got rejected at McDonald's, at Taco Bell.
You rejected at McDonald's?
Yeah, I was rejected from all the fast food.
Yes, you see, our Minister of Foreign Affairs invited Mr. Blinken to McDonald's and shared his students' experience. Yes, that it was the best place after his students' hangovers. Yes.
Well, so
very diplomatic sentence. Yes.
I missed that, but that sounds interesting.
No, you know what I'm talking about, yeah? That this Mr. Kuleba invited what was his name? Blinken to McDonald's
in Kiev.
In Kiev, yes. And when they had the dinner, not just dinner, some lunch, yes. He shared that he remembered McDonald's as the best place in his students' life because after strong hangovers they used to visit. And it was jotted down, during in the subtitle, like stenography, yes, during his conversation. It was not only the.
No, that's great. I think that's great.
Yeah,
it gives it that more real feel.
Yes, it feels that the life of Ukrainian students is not less boring and dull than abroad. But however, just anyway, please. Can you?
So I just I had a lot. I wanted money. And I saw opportunity to make money using software, and I wrote software because I didn't know how to play video games. I was worse at it than most people, but I was better at software than most people. So then I got into like teaching people programming on the side.
At what age? Just one to.
So I was 13 when I started.
13. So we are in the still period before you started your own business, not business like your own company, yes.
I don't have my own company yet.
But yeah, now you didn't. But before you had quite as for your level, as for your age, you had a quite successful.
I mean, for a child, I made really good money.
Yes.
So I was making $3 an hour teaching Java to one of the Ukrainian community center members. He was a professor of math from Kharkiv.
Well, in Canada, yes.
Yeah, but he just found it easier to learn from a person, from a child, than it was from a book.
From a native speaker, yes.
Than from a book.
From books.
Yeah, so because he was taking courses, but the courses were in English.
They were not efficient, yes.
But this way, for me, he could get help in Ukrainian, and he found that easier to combine courses with a $3 an hour student teacher.
And it worked out more convenient, yes, than visiting single classes with grammar, using this paper books, yes, filling with the multiple choice and etc. Right? Yes, that's I know from my own experience.
Yeah. So anyway, there was a bunch of jobs like that, and at some point, I graduated university. I worked at Nokia along the way at university.
What university you graduated?
2000.
You know which university?
Oh, this university that nobody knows about. It's the University of Victoria in Canada.
Anyway, Robert.
It's a very nice village university.
I will say village.
Almost nobody relevant ever went there before or after.
And then you transferred to US, yes?
Yeah, so then I got my first job, and in Canada, housing was really expensive, and the jobs, it's still really expensive, and the jobs still pay really bad. So the first chance I got...
As far as I know, the wages in Canada and in US, they are irrelevant, yes?
What do you mean irrelevant?
Irrelevant means in Canada, they are less
in Canada
profitable.
I'm pretty sure people in Canada make less money after taxes than in Lviv in software engineering.
This is the very good, sorry for interrupting you, but the one misleading which happened to our Ukraine. No, I would say that war emigrants, the people who proactively started to emigrate after 2022, yes, that sometimes when you arrive in your country, or United States or US or even the Europe, your income is is much more less than you expected, and your disbursements are quite high.
Yeah.
And if we compare maybe you will correct me, the affordability in Ukraine.
It's very simple. Economists call this income inequality.
What?
So if you have income inequality, you have massive economic growth, because you have people who have a lot more money who make jobs for people who have less money. And then if everybody makes the same amount of money,
so the economy wouldn't exist.
Exactly. So Canada is much closer to everybody making the same amount of money. So the economy is really bad there. In US, there's still a wide income gap. So the economy works better because you can always make more money than somebody else. Not always, but sometimes. And in Ukraine, there's still a lot of room for improvement in the income inequality.
Yeah. Yes, and so after you graduated, you started your business. Yes.
No business. I was always working for somebody else.
But anyway,
my dad had his own business, and I learned that your own business is very tough.
So share your experience.
And I just decided to make as much money as I could as a salary, and focus on cycling and hobbies in my spare time instead of stressing out about the business. So I started out at Mozilla for an entry-level salary back then for them, which was still better than like a good salary in US. I mean, the entry-level salary in Mozilla was much better than like an average salary in Canada. And that difference has only gotten bigger since.
So you get the gap, yeah?
So basically, in figures, it was, so you count money in annual amounts there. So there you make $60,000 a year.
After paying taxes or before?
So in both cases, so in Canada, like, it was really hard to get above $50,000 as an entry level.
But the Canadian dollars.
Canadian, but they're about 20% lower.
Anyway,
so that's like $40,000 in US. But in US, it was really hard to get less than $80,000.
Yes.
So immediately by just going over the border, you make double, and then like cost of living is actually lower in US. So then you make basically a house in Vancouver costs $1 million, and a house in Oregon costs $200,000. So your housing is 5 times cheaper, your salary is twice as much. and the actual growth of your salary is higher too. So every year you get a higher increment.
It's like a double, yes.
Yeah, it's better than double.
It's like a small dwindle, yes, from the one level into the another, right?
Yeah, so that's why nobody should ever go to Canada. It's a good way to be poor.
It's like okay, and what the main challenges or let's say the problems you faced in the United States after working yourself there?
Well, so the problem with the U.S. is if you want to make money, you have to move a lot. So basically, there's a lot of states, and some of them are quite poor.
The sustained motion, yes.
It's kind of like the European Union, where there's some countries live like Germany and some countries live like Spain. So I lived in Oregon, then I decided to switch jobs, and there was no more good jobs in Oregon. So I had no choice but to move to Silicon Valley in California.
Wow! So it's a person. Did you met any of the celebrities personally?
No celebrities that I know of.
No.
They were not obvious. But there was everyone, like all my friends worked for some cool companies. Somebody would be working for Tesla, somebody would be working for, Google, somebody would be working for Facebook. There's a lot of kind of Amazon, all those companies. You had an opportunity to work in any of those companies if you wanted to.
And during your career, like promotion, did you met some other people who were poor, not who came from Ukraine, especially United States, who also did a good career, but they moved?
Yeah, so basically on average, an average immigrant is always making more money than the native. So this is true in Canada. This is true in US. In USA, they were poor when they were young, and they know
the real wealth of the real world.
So they're hungrier. They never had a comfortable life when they were young, and then as a result,
it's money addiction, yes.
And then there's also culturally, like in US, there's a lot more focus on doing what you like. Whereas everywhere else in the world, there's a lot more focus on making money. So like in Ukraine, nobody will ever tell you, go do yoga instead of being a software engineer. Whereas in America, it's pretty common to get advice like that. You'll be unhappy if you make more money as a software engineer at a terrible job than if you do yoga, which you love.
Which you love. if you don't realize your kids' dreams, yes.
Yeah,
so that's,
exactly.
So the main.
Exactly. You have to go to a psychologist and work out all of your childhood trauma.
Administrate the antidepressants or other.
It's actually really funny. So like in US, almost nobody who starts university knows how much money they're going to make afterwards. They just like, well, I liked history, I'm going to start doing history in school. Or I liked math, I might do computer science, and then when they graduate, they're like, oh, I can actually make a lot more money doing computer science than math. Like they don't have that. Whereas immigrants, when they go into it, they're like, how am I going to make the most money? Like, should I be a doctor? Should I be something? There's no like lifestyle consideration.
Attorney, lawyer, anybody else. Yeah. They're just focused on the main.
It's all about economic factors for immigrants.
So.
I mean, not all immigrants are the same. There's some that are broken, like the locals.
But I think that we are approaching to the key question of our discussion is what factors motivated you to move to Ukraine? I want to tell for our.
You
moved before 24 February 2020.
Yeah, like 5 days before or something.
5 days before. It's quite brave.
I had a relationship, and the relationship needed me to be here instead of there.
This was the main motivation. Yes, money and relationships is the main.
There's two motivations in life.
Like as Freud sentence once. So the relationship, but your relationships influence like.
I mean, honestly, I didn't think there was going to be an invasion. I thought this is just going to be more like hot air.
As majority of Ukrainians quite seen that it was just a goosebumps.
So the first thing we did when shit hit the fan.
So just beating about the bush, yes, we started.
Exactly. So we left within the first 5 hours of the invasion because we were just really scared like everybody else.
The majority of them.
And then we came back 3 months later. Once things kind of stabilized and it was clear that we're not going to get tortured by Russians.
Yes, unless some missile, yes.
Like I look at missiles, it's like there's less cars in Ukraine than in US, so your chances of getting run over are probably higher than your chances of getting hit by a missile in Lviv.
It's a gambling, yes.
Well, it's statistics. Like you can get chased by a bear in California. That doesn't mean that California is dangerous.
Maybe it's a stupid comparison, but pale in comparison to you during the attacks 2001. Yes, you lived in Canada and United States.
Canada.
Well, anyway, can we compare?
I mean, it is a stupid comparison. There's nothing. It's like it was like a TV event. Like, look, there's terrorists on TV. Like it didn't feel real. It felt like everything's different, but like more in like the public relations sense. Like it's like it was about roughly like a new president got elected or something. So like now it's cool to kill terrorists instead of whatever they were doing before that. Yeah. So like it was terrorists became stars in all the movies. That was like the biggest change from that. And then U.S. decided to spend money stupidly on the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. So it didn't really affect anybody except for like the national debt changed.
Yes, the U.S. always needs some place where to interact, yes, and to interfere with the.
The Soviet Union disappeared, and they wanted to play with somebody, and they had nobody to play with, so they came up. They essentially made up a new enemy, and but anyway, we have to wrap up pretty quick. So I don't know if there's any points we want to address.
So what? As you said, you don't give any advices, which is quite practically wise from my point of view. But what thoughts and what, I would say, some suggestions you can address to the young Ukrainians who are abroad, instead of just our invitation to return into.
I mean, so when I was living in U.S., whenever you make any sort of, if you have a serious career, your career is partially based on your skills, and the other part is based on your social connections. I mean, motivation, sure, but like there's social connections.
Okay.
If you know somebody and you have the skills, you have a very good chance of making it. If you don't know somebody, and I started out not knowing anybody, so I knew how frustrating that was compared to people who knew it.
That's very important, actually. The main message of our program is that the person who made himself, you made yourself. Yes, you came as an immigrant. You didn't know, you didn't have some godfather.
There was zero social support for me. It was just me going to university. Yes. I was working to pay for it. There was no like rich people to sponsor, no rich parents to sponsor me. No
support. Yes, anybody can call that can. Solve some current problems.
All the jobs I got was from either meeting people or applying for them. There's no easy way into it. I mean, for the first ones, and then eventually I made up my social capital.
I see.
And the advice is always the same for that. Make all the connections you can there, and if you're planning to come back,
entirely, yes.
Try to use them here. And if you connect what Ukraine is best at with what US is best at, or France or Germany or whatever, it's always going to be better than going at it alone. So it's not a very specific advice, but having friends in good places is always good.
And especially that we live in the internet period, yes, when the majority of the some obstacle or challenges are using online, yes. So it's give a quite very good prospects for flourishing Ukrainian youth and etc. So I think maybe even if one of the Ukrainians or anybody abroad will listen to us and just take example from you, it will be good and fruitful goal.
Hope it's helpful.
Of our speak. Thank you so much, and hopefully meet you after victory. We'll talk. Hopefully we'll be soon. Дякую, до побачення.